Alright guys, here's the video for 6.5, two-way frequency tables. We are going to be talking about a few kinds of frequencies. There's a few kinds of frequencies we want to discuss. There's the joint frequency, we have marginal frequency, and we'll have conditional frequency. They're all talking about frequency. We'll also be talking about relative frequency. That's another new term. We have a lot of new terms to discuss today, and this is a little bit, the terms are new to you. It will be new to you, and I'll do my best here to try to differentiate between each of them and give you a good explanation for each of them. But we're going to be talking about a joint frequency, a marginal frequency, and a conditional relative frequency. We're also going to be using the word relative frequency. Relative to what? And that's what we're going to discuss. So, first, you're going to have to do some writing, okay? And it takes a little bit of time, but first I need you to do some writing of definitions. All right, so let's start with the very first definition here, two-way frequency table. Let's do one thing at a time here. A two-way frequency table, write that down. Two-way frequency table is a table that lists two categorical variables. So we're going to be talking about two categories, things that are divided into two categories, and these values are paired together. So two categorical variables whose values have been paired. Okay? We're going to talk about, for example, male and female who likes what kind of flavor of ice cream. Okay? We got the males that like chocolate, the males that like strawberry flavor. So we're going to be pairing up some categories, variables, and their values. Okay? So those are, it's a table and is a frequency. We're going to pretty much write down how often, how many people like a certain kind of a category, fits in certain kind of a category. Okay, the next thing is a joint relative frequency. Okay, a joint relative frequency is found by dividing. So how do I find a joint relative frequency? Every time I see the word relative, I want you to think of percentage. Okay, so I'm going to write right on the top of it, percentage. All right, we're going to be talking about percentage. So joint, because it's going to be two things joined together. So a joint, two things together, the percentage of these two things is found by dividing a frequency that is not in the total rows. We don't want the totals in the columns or in the rows. We want the frequency that is not in the total rows or in the total columns by the grand total. So we're going to be focusing on the grand total. Okay, that's what we're going to be dividing by. Not, I want you to make sure that it's not in the rows or in the columns. I have a super hard time with this word. I know some of you are probably already giggling because I probably said it wrong, but I have a super hard time with this word. So this joint relative frequency is a percentage. We're going to be finding it pretty much by dividing by the grand total. So that's what I want you to focus is grand total. Okay? Now the next thing is a marginal relative frequency. Now think of margins. Think of the edges. Okay? Think of edges. The margins of a paper are on the edges. So marginal percentage, because every time you see the word relative, you're thinking of percentage. So the percentages of the edges, that is found by dividing the row total or the column total by the grand total. So now I am talking about the rows and the columns. Row. Oh my gosh, that's so hard. All right. So now we're talking about the margins, the percentage in the margins. Okay? So once you're done writing these three definitions, There's a few more. Pause it. Start the video again. Let's move on. We have a few more, and it will be a two-way relative frequency table. So I'm pretty much doing instead of just frequency, I'm going to do a table that display only percentages. So percentages, okay? So instead of a two-way frequency, like we saw it a second ago, a two-way frequency table, we're going to do a two-way percentage table. It displays everything in percentages, the joint relative, the marginal relative, and everything is going to be in percentage, okay? Now the next one is conditional, and this one is the hardest. You may write this definition, but it's probably not going to make a whole lot of sense. It'll only start making sense when I talk with numbers, when there are numbers. So pause the video, write down the definition, and then let's put it into practice. And this is found by dividing the frequency that is not in the total row or in the total column, okay? And we're going to divide it by the frequency in the rows and in the columns. Kind of confusing. Let's talk about it. Okay, so now that you have these definitions written down, they're kind of all scattered in your brain. I totally understand it. Let's go ahead and put something into practice here, and let's talk about these definitions of joint frequency, relative frequency, marginal frequency, and so forth. So I have an example here. Here are my variables. I have boys and girls. That's one of my variables. That's one of my categories. You're either boy or girl. And then you're going to have people that likes dogs, cats, or other kinds of pets. Okay. Now here on the edges, okay, this total, this row over here and this column, these are my margins. Okay. That's why we call it a marginal total, and right here is also a marginal total. This one over here is going to be my grand total. Okay, my final total of everything. All right. So let's suppose that you have 10 boys that likes dogs. 10 boys that likes dogs. Let's say that you have 5 boys that likes cats. And let's say that you have 9 boys that like other kind of animals. Okay, together this adds up to 24. Now, girls, let's pretend that you have 8 girls that likes dogs and 7 girls that likes cats. And let's say 1 girl like another kind of animal. Now let's go ahead and find our marginal totals. The marginal, I found one already. So these are called our marginal totals. Let me put a little arrow, and this is our marginal. And over here is also our marginal, because this is the margins of the table, okay? These are the center, the joint, and these are the margins. Okay, so let's find the total. This would be 16, okay? Now let's find the columns. That would be 10 plus 8, which is 18, 5 plus 7, which is 12, and 8 plus 1, which is 10. So these are my column totals, and these are my these are my rows, and these are my columns. Okay, columns and rows. All right. Now, what is the grand total? Well, 18 plus 12 is 30, plus 10 is 40. And if you check over here, it also adds 24 plus 16 also adds to 40. This guy over here is our grand total. It should match it if you did it right. If I add 24 plus 16, it adds to 40. If I add 18 plus 12 plus 10, it also adds up to 40. So it's true no matter which way you look at it, okay? And that is a two-way frequency table. So let me label, this is a two-way frequency table. So this is just frequency. We're not talking about percentages yet. We're not talking about relative frequency. We're just talking about frequency. And there you go. Now I can ask you any question I want, and you are going to answer from the two-way frequency table. For example, I can ask you, how many total students were surveyed? I can ask you, how many total students were surveyed? Okay, how many total students were surveyed? Well, 40 total, because there was 24 boys, 24 girls. So that would 40, right? So I could ask you, how many total boys took the survey? Well, all the boys would be 24. All the girls, how many total girls took the survey? 16 girls, a total of 40 students. So I can ask you any kind of question, and you can answer me in that way. I can ask you, B, how many boys like other pets? How many boys like other pets? Now this is a joint frequency because I am looking for boys, which are this right here, but also that like other pets. So the joint is right here, okay? Not only boys, but also other. And that would be 9. This would be an example, let me put under. This is an example of a joint frequency question, okay? Because I want to know two things joint at the same time. You got to be a boy and like other kind of pet. I can ask you, letter C, how many, what is the frequency of how many girls like cats? How many girls, oh, I didn't know that you guys couldn't see it. How many girls like cats? If you look at the table, let me zoom out a little bit. How many girls like cats? So that is a joint. I need girls and cats. So girls, right here, those are my girls, but only the joint with cats. So that would be 7, okay? 7 girls, or just 7, okay? 7 girls like cats. And those are simple example of joint frequency. Again, this is an example of joint frequency. Now, let's go ahead and do something a little bit more interesting. Let's go ahead and create a two-way relative frequency based on exact same numbers. Okay, so we are gonna use exact same table here. We're gonna turn from a frequency to a relative frequency. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch it to a relative frequency. Here we go. I have exactly the same size of table, but I am now going to construct a two-way relative frequency table. Now, relative frequency, I want you to, every time you see the word relative, let me see if I can find my green pen here. Every time you see the word relative, I want you to think of percentage. I want you to think of percent, okay? Now, I am going to change this regular table here, a frequency table, to a relative frequency table by dividing every single number that we had here by the grand total. So I'm going to divide 10 divided by 40, okay? And then we're going to divide, which is 10 divided by 40 is 0.25. And we want to show that as 25%. And these are dogs, and these are cats, and these are others. These are our total, and these are boys, and these are girls, and this is also our total, okay? So I'm going to switch everything to percentage. This other one would be 8 girls divided by the grand total, and 8 divided by 40. If you do it, you get 0.2. And if you multiply 0.2 by 100, you get 20%. And you're going to do this for every single thing. Go ahead and switch it by, look, I'm dividing by the grand total. And then here we had 18. So 18 divided by 40, and that is 0.45. So that is 45%. I want you to do the same thing for the cats and for the others and for the total. Here, you're going to have 40 divided by 40, which is just 1, which means 100%. That's the only place where you should have 100%. Go ahead and finish the table. You can pause the video, finish the table, and then we'll compare our answers. Okay, so back to it. So I'm doing 5 divided by 40, then 7 divided by 40, and I got 0.175, which is 18%. And then here should be 12 divided by 40, which is 0.3, and it should be 30%. Now, let's see a mistake I made right here, okay? Look, 25 plus 20 adds up to 45. Here, 13 plus 18 does not add up to 30. I over-rounded here, and it is the right way to round it to 13% and to 18%, but it has to add up to 30%. So I'm going to keep this as 12%. I have to come back and adjust the table, because 12 plus 18 does equal 30%, okay? So you have to kind of like, you can round it and then adjust it so it can add up to the correct amount. Okay, so here on the others, we would have 22%. We end up with 22%, and here we will end up with 0.2%, right? 0.2%. This is 0.02, 0.025, which is 3%, and that makes a total of 25%. So I have to be careful how I am rounding my things here so I can add up. 22 plus 3 makes 25. Okay, so here you should have your 60%, and here you should have your 40%, and it adds up to 100. So if you check, my numbers adds up together, okay? And check again this way. 45 plus 30 plus 25, does that add up to 100? It should, right? And 60 plus 40, does that add up to 100? So that's how it should be. Everything should add up right, okay? When I add up the columns and when I add up the rows, okay? So that is how you create a two-way relative frequency. Now I can ask you relative frequency questions. I can ask you, what is the joint relative frequency of boys who likes other pets? What is the joint? So I'm looking for a joint of boys and other pets, but I want the relative frequency, which is percentage. So boys who likes pet, 22%. Okay, so joint relative, it's a joint percentage instead of just a joint frequency. Okay, I can ask you, what is the joint relative frequency of girls who likes dogs? So girls that like dogs, that is 20%. Okay? So now we have discussed joint frequency and joint relative frequency. And you know the difference between a frequency table with just the frequency numbers, and here is a relative frequency, which is percentage. Is relative to the grand total, okay? Now let's talk about marginal frequency. I can ask you, what is the marginal frequency, which is frequency, I'm talking about this table. What is the marginal frequency of students who like dogs? So I'm not saying boys or girls, I'm just saying what is the marginal frequency of students who like dogs. So that's the marginal, and these are the only students that like dogs, so it's 18. Now if I ask you for a marginal relative frequency, I can say what is the marginal relative frequency of students who likes cats. So marginal, so that is the margins of students who likes cats. That would be the only ones that like cats are in here, and the margin is 30%. So I could answer 30%, okay? So now the most difficult one to talk about is conditional. In conditional, I have to give you a condition, okay? And you're always going to see the word given. I'm not going to use this table here. I am going to use, let me write something really quick. On conditional, you're always going to see the word given. And given is your condition. Whatever is given is your condition. Okay, whatever is, you're always going to see the word given, and the word given is the condition that you need to pay attention to it. You have to use the frequency table. Okay, make sure you use the frequency table, not the relative frequency, to answer the conditional questions. Let me show you an example. Okay, I can ask you a question that is conditional, such as, let me think here. Let me use the original table, because that's what I say here. Use the frequency table. I can ask you, find the conditional relative frequency. So conditional, I have to give you a condition, and relative frequency is percentage. So find the conditional relative frequency that a student surveyed prefer cats given the student is a girl. So my condition that I'm giving you is that I only want you to look at girls. Okay, so these are the only girls right here. That's my condition. So given that they're girls, what is the relative frequency that they prefer cats? So first of all, given that they're only girls, I cannot look at anywhere else on the table. I cover it. I only look at girls. That's my condition. So given that they're only girls, what is the relative frequency of girls that likes cats? So we have 7 girls that like cats, but given that I'm taking the percentage only from the girls, that would be 7 divided by 16. That would be the condition that I only want girls. And the question would be something like this, okay? Let me show you right here. Calculating a conditional relative frequency is exactly the same table we were using. Now, find the conditional relative frequency that a student survey prefer cats as pets given the student is a girl. Now, this is my condition. Given that these are girls, how many of them prefer cats? That would be 7 divided by 16. The way to set up is the number of girls who prefer cats given the total number of girls. 7 divided by 16 is 0.4375, and you could round to 44%. Okay, you could round to 44%. So you have to pay attention to the condition that is given. And we use the frequency table, the original one. Here's another question with conditional relative, okay? And that will be my last question. Here's another question. It says, find the conditional relative frequency that a student surveyed is a girl given, now here's the only place we can look at it, given that the student prefer cats. So I can only look at the cats, cover everything else. I can only look at the cats. That's my condition. Given that there's cats, what is the percentage that they are girls? Well, there's 7 girls, given that we are only looking at cats. So 7 divided by 12. So the number of girls who prefer cats, given the condition, this is your condition right here on the bottom, that they prefer cats. And 7 divided by 12 is 0.583, which is 58.3%. You can round to just 58%. So the condition we tell you is always found under the word, after the word given. So you need to pay attention, given your condition. And that's the only place where you can look at it, okay? And I have one last for conditional, so you can take a look at it. Let me cover the answer. Oh, the answer is pretty much given when you circle it. Okay. Find the conditional relative frequency, so a percentage find on certain condition, that a student surveyed prefer cats, given the student is a boy. So I can only look at the boy column. That's my condition. I can't look anywhere else. But I want to find all the boys that like cats. So that's 5 boys, given that I can only look at boys. That's 5 boys that like cats. So that would be 5 divided by 24, which is 0.208. You can totally round that to 21%. Okay? So the conditional percentage, relative frequency is a percentage. We have to give you a condition to only look at a certain spot, only take it from that category, and then you're good. Okay? So that is pretty much 6.4 relative two-way table. I'm sorry, this is 6.5 two-way frequency table. I am pressed for time. Hopefully this helps, and we can start working on the homework. I'll make another video going over the answers on the worksheet. Okay? So hopefully that helps. Good luck with your worksheet. That's why you should be working on it, and we'll compare answers.